who streamed along by the thousands, all in school uniform. After all, they had nothing. They were not aggressive. They just had placards saying, "Away with Afrikaans." Police vans appeared. The children refused to return to school. And then, the police just opened fire. There were little children coming. I remember their uniform was green and gray. All hell broke loose here, and the little boy fell here, between these two houses, between my house and here. That little boy was 11-year-old Hector Peterson, the first of hundreds injured or killed by South African police during 3 days of countrywide protests. The photo of 18-year-old Buyisa Makubu carrying Hector's lifeless body as his gasping, distraught sister ran alongside splashed across newspapers around the world. For neither the first nor the last time, the UN Security Council issued a resolution condemning apartheid as a crime against the conscience and dignity of mankind. Another 18 years of violence ensued before South Africa held its first truly democratic election in 1994. The teenagers who rose up in June 1976 understood very well how Bantu education was designed to limit their abilities and ambitions. This was no spontaneous riot. It was a well-organized insurgency, part and parcel of a long liberation struggle. These teenagers had watched the foundations of systemic racism being poured, the bricks laid down day after day, not just in their schools, but also in their housing, their transport, their livelihoods, and their geographies. Soweto itself had been built as apartheid's flagship model township, largely financed by one of South Africa's biggest mining houses. The mere fact that schools for black pupils were governed separately, indeed the very appropriation of Bantu as a racial rather than a linguistic category, signaled the state's intention to colonize minds as well as bodies. English had been bad enough. Afrikaans was untenable. As South African photographer Ernest Cole had explained to U.S. audiences a decade earlier, it has turned out that we studied the white man's language only to learn the terms of our servitude. 300 years of white supremacy in South Africa have placed us in bondage, stripped us of dignity, robbed us of self-esteem, and surrounded us with hate. Cole penned those words with hope in his heart. They prefaced his now classic House of Bondage, the photo collection he could only publish in 1967 by escaping from South Africa. America promised a more just society. He hadn't yet grasped how deeply his description would reverberate for Black Americans, for whom the 1933 words of historian Carter Godwin Woodson still applied. So-called modern education does others so much more good than it does the Negro, because it has been worked out in conformity to the needs of those who have enslaved and oppressed weaker peoples. The philosophy and ethics resulting from our educational system have justified slavery, peonage, segregation, and lynching. Negroes daily educated in the tenets of such a religion of the strong have accepted the status of the weak as divinely ordained. In both South Africa and the United States, two nations built on settler colonial white supremacy, systemic and epistemic racism went hand in glove. The physical and knowledge infrastructures of grand apartheid distilled systemic and epistemic racism into their purest forms, weaving them into the fabric of everyday life. Cole's words resonated deeply in America. It is an extraordinary experience to live as though life were a punishment for being black. The protective institutions of society are not for you. Police, magistrates, courts, all the apparatus of the law reinforces the already absolute power of the white boss and his madam. On these and other fronts, apartheid South Africa joined the U.S. in epitomizing what philosopher Charles Mills calls the racial contract, the political, moral,